I'm back for the start of Dusty coverage of IEM Cologne 2023, and I'm here with Stamina as part of Nouns' bootcamp at the event that they've won as a result of winning the ESEA Cash Cup circuit. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Bobby, is how has your bootcamp been going? I know it's still very early days, but what's it like to have the team all together here in Europe?
Yeah, outside of a little bit of jet lag and being pretty tired, it's been a pretty cool experience getting to have a practice room, next to all the other teams, kind of get the same treatment, get to hang out with some of the players on the terrace and whatnot. It's been a really nice vibe. And obviously practice has been going really well, so it's been pretty fun.
And talking about sort of the overall quality of the practice, there's sort of a meme in the NA community that when you go to Europe for the first time or when you have an extended period to practice, it's like the quality of NA practice looks so awful in comparison. Have you kind of got that vibe of just how much better European practice is?
So it's not that it's necessarily like so much better. It's that we could get this level of practice for like one scrim a week in North America, right? Like if we got like a Liquid or maybe like a Furia or any of the other top teams, right? But consistently and having 4 to 5 in a single day is not possible. Like for example, today we played 5 scrims. All 5 scrims were versus like very strong teams, and we were able to really like dig deep and figure out like, are we getting punished for things? Where do we need to like improve? And I think that's a lot of like um, that's a lot of what you're missing when you're scrimming in North America. You don't really get punished as much because some of the teams just don't have the individual prowess or the experience to really know how to like counter you. So yeah, it's been a really great experience so far.
And does it help to put your team's growth in perspective at all in terms of, obviously Nouns is one of the best teams in North America, but from your experience scrimming against these European teams, does it sort of reaffirm the level you guys think you're at, or does it give you sort of a pause for thought on things we need to work on?
I think it's a little bit of both. I actually had the opportunity to go to Europe with Strife 2 years ago, a little under 2 years ago, um, and we boot camped in Poland, and then we played a ESL conference, ESL Pro League conference in Jönköping, Sweden. We took dead last at that tournament. We lost to Tailu 0-2. We lost to Kavana 0-2. And when we played scrims there, they were like hit or miss. We were like okay. So far, how we've played so like at this boot camp, it kind of makes me realize like how far up I've come at least in 2 years and like my understanding of the game, myself as an individual, and then everybody else has been like push, like carrying their weight so far in scrims as well. And so for sure, I think it's like really nice to know that like sure we can struggle with like regional teams just because we play each other all the time. Like we know everything about each other. But when we come and play top teams, we're not that far behind in terms of like being able to like be competitive. I'm not saying we go out like win a major, win a top event, but it definitely feels like we are a lot more competitive than maybe the community might think.
And sort of part of that extra experience that comes from being at the IEM Cologne boot camp is you've had a chance to work with Liquid's former head coach adreN. Once again, unfortunately, it's still very early days, so maybe the thoughts won't be as well collected, and you haven't had the whole experience. But what's it like working with him so far in Cologne?
adreN has been really great to work with. He's just an extra set of eyes who's really just helping a lot with like the big picture stuff. Obviously, having experience working with Liquid, he's worked through so many different issues that they might have had in game, out of game, etc. And he's a lot of like able to shine light on that with us, and just being able to have that extra perspective is really nice. I mean, obviously, I can't really go into detail too much of exactly what he's been doing, but mainly he's just been more of like the big picture guy for us. Corey Semfis, he's still doing his main coaching duties, but adreN's also kind of like recapping things and helping us just realize like, um, the big things overall. Like the macro kind of stuff in our play. So it's been a great experience so far.
And so I wanted to ask you sort of about Noun's road to this, boot camp. Obviously, you've only joined the team recently, coming into the team about a month ago, and you weren't here when they, bested 80K to earn the spot at the boot camp. About a week or so after they, made this boot camp, they ended up cutting Cynic, and you ended up returning to the team. I wanted to ask you first, was there any reluctance on your part to return to this team after your short-lived experience with them at the start of the year?
No, there wasn't any reluctance to rejoin. I didn't have any issues with anybody on the team. They felt at the time it was best to replace me. I probably had, you know, some issues that I needed to work on. At the same time, they just felt like it was the best direction to grab Markey, and I think Markey's a fantastic player. And playing with him, I feel like this team has a different level that we didn't have when I was playing here before. Not that Cynic's, not a great player as well, but it's different. The roles are much different, and Marquis is a lot more of a passive support player versus Cynic being more of like the entry kind of, star role type of player. So having somebody like Marquis to work with is something I've not really had outside of maybe like Infinite in my entire career, was just having somebody who's really confident and really experienced in like that support type position, and it's really nice.
And so you sort of mentioned your removal from Nouns originally, where you said, you weren't necessarily what they needed at the time and some of the, issues with that. And I wanted to ask you, how have you changed as a player and as a person that sort of allowed you to come back to Nouns?
So, I mean, it's no secret that I've like had issues with like tilting through my career. I think that's been a big talking point for me, and I think personally, it's the only thing that really holds me back is myself. With that being said, it wasn't really the primary reason I was removed from Nouns. Sure, it was like part of an issue, like, but the bigger issue was just not seeing eye to eye, specifically with Cynic. He had previously been the in-game leader, and then he brought me in to be the in-game leader. And I think when I was brought in, I was thinking I was just going to come in and do my thing. I'm a very vocal, very structured, theoretical in-game leader, and I just don't think we saw eye to eye. So when there was the opportunity to bring Markey back, and he played the exact same role of in-game leader and opper, he felt like at the time it was an upgrade. The team felt like at the time it was an upgrade, 1-for-1, and that was a decision they made. So, yeah.
So, we talk about sort of the great boon that Markey has brought to this team, but, there are three players that remain from your original tenure on Nouns, CJ and CJ, B. Wills, and Carson. How have they grown as players in the past, 6 months or so?
I think, they've definitely all gotten better individually, specifically. I think all three of them are a lot sharper than when I played with them previously. CJ, when I had joined Nouns, actually was still kind of new to like being back like full time. They'd only picked him up like 2 months prior, I think. They had some change with like removing like Jazz Pimp, CXCI, some other players. Like I don't remember exactly how it all worked, but CJ has been in incredible form. He's kind of moving more into like the star role for us. I think a lot about this boot camp is us finding our identity. I think those three players often were just kind of playing in a system where they were more so like told what to do versus like understanding what their position and what their job is on the team. And that's kind of dynamic I like to bring as an in-game leader, is like a system where we all understand kind of like how we are going to benefit each other, because at the end of the day we have to be a team to win. And I think that they've been great to work with, and especially CJ. I think he's the one that deserves like a big shout out. He's been playing like really good.
Along with sort of your return to Nouns, NA has undergone something of a pretty significant shuffle. We've seen the rise of teams like Bad News Bears, the rise of the team Forsaken, and we've seen a bunch of other teams change over their compositions. Overall, looking at the NA scene as it stands before and after the player break, do you think we've grown, or do you think we've regressed sort of in the overall quality of teams, especially considering teams like Forsaken and B&B?
So I think what's interesting is like every time there's a change in North America, I feel like it's one more player who just like drops their ego and wants to play with somebody else. Like if you actually look at some of these teams and like how they're composed, you ask yourself why they weren't composed like this 2 years ago. I think there's a lot of players in North America that have great attributes, but we're kind of spread thin across multiple teams. Maybe one team has a really good in-game leader, one team has a really great opper, one team has like a star rifler. And I just think like in North America, we could actually have like three really strong like tier 2 teams if these teams were all just kind of like combined together. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. Seeing like Mnmzzz and Swisher join up, like I mean that it makes so much sense, right? So I think it's a good thing.
And with that in mind, Nouns is currently ranked as the third best team in North America with Liquid exiting and with Liquid exiting. Do you think that's deserved? Do you think that's deserved to be the third best team in North America, or do you think there's room for you guys to sort of grow up the rankings and maybe overtake EG, for example?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask who's ahead of us. Like I was blanking on it for a second, but with EG and Complexity, I think they're both kind of different. Complexity has like a lot of experience, and they've kind of been doing this for a while. Whereas EG was just EG Black. We played against them. They weren't ever like, they weren't a team that was just like completely dismantling. On Strife, we struggled with them a lot, but on Nouns, they didn't really struggle with them. They'd go back and forth. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, we haven't played EG since they've added automatic. They're having a long boot camp in Europe, which I think is going to help them a ton. Is it fair to say that we're the third best team and those two teams are better than us? For sure. Like, we have to prove it. I'm bringing a new system. It's going to take time for us to kind of like gel. But the goal is that we can kind of bridge the gap and try to attend more European events. At the moment, they're not really our threat because they're partner teams. So they just get to go to every event. We need to beat whatever teams from Brazil decide to land in North America, or anybody else in NA, such as like MAD. So to be honest, we're not really focused on them too much.
And looking towards the future to end out this interview, what's next for Nouns after their boot camp here?
So after this boot camp, we actually fly over to Serbia, and we'll be there from the 1st until the 10th, I believe. We're going to be playing the CCT Global Finals. Unfortunately, not everything's released about that event, but it should be in the coming days, and there should be some more information on who we're playing and whatnot. But knowing some of the teams behind the scenes, it's looking like a really competitive event, even though Cologne's going on. So it'll be a good opportunity for us to show what we've been up to.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Bobby. Hope you enjoy the rest of your boot camp.
Thanks.